Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Starboars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
Welcome to Starboars, the best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Starboars Show.
The best place for below average Star Wars.
I'm the Geordie Jedi Pete, your host for this episode, and this is episode 1 of our brand new series, Purely BELTA. For those who don't know what Purely BELTA means, obviously I am the Geordie Jedi, based up in Newcastle, the northeast of England, and Purely BELTA is a slang term up here in the north of England for something that's excellent or brilliant or really good. For example, if I go to my favourite burger place, which happens to be the Meat Stack in Newcastle, and I have my favourite burger there, that burger is Purely BELTA. And what we're going to do is, obviously this is a Star Wars podcast, I want to find out what other people's Purely BELTA thing about Star Wars is. So every Purely BELTA episode, they're probably going to run once a month, hopefully. There's no exact time frame, but they're going to be like a special series similar to the Known Me, Known You series that have been running since the lockdown started. Someone new is going to come on and I'm going to ask them what they find Purely BELTA about Star Wars. So without further ado, the special guest host of episode 1 of Purely BELTA is Brian Ballance. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm so excited to be here. Episode 1? Look at that. Right out the gate and coincidentally related. I like that. Peter. I will say that I'm going to ruin your title with my American accent. Purely BELTA? Is it Belter like ER or A like BELTA?
So the way we say it is with the A, so it's BELTA.
Okay, so like
but
Purely
down,
BELTA.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying it's Purely Belter. Technically, if you wrote it out, Purely Belter. But then because it's slang, it's Purely BELTA, which sounds so dumb when I'm saying it. Your accent is so much cooler than mine, Peter.
Yeah. So because of our accents, sometimes ARs like turn into A's. So it's like Purely BELTA.
I understand. Yeah, I totally get it. Where I'm from, we don't put G's on the end of our words. So it's like morning, helping, eating. You know, we just drop the G off at the end. So, but with your accent, it sounds so much cooler. It's like Purely BELTA. Purely BELTA. I'm trying.
That's a fantastic version of our accent.
Yeah. Anyone that's in Newcastle right now, I apologize. But Purely BELTA. It's almost like Cockney, where you've got like the glottal stops of like bottle or water, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. So like every area has its own sort of slang. So it's like
totally.
It's, I don't know. It's weird. So
it's awesome.
Where I live up here, obviously got my accent, but then like about 5 miles down the road, there's a different accent. But people who aren't from the UK probably won't pick up on it.
Sure.
But
sure.
Here in the UK, you can pick up on little things. And you can tell where someone's 5 miles away from where you are. If that makes sense. It's quite
sure. It's very colloquial.
Yeah,
that makes sense. America's the same way because we like, Florida. I mean, I guess they kind of have a interesting accent, but not noticeably. But then just north of us is Georgia, and Georgia's got its own sort of accent, and right next to them is Alabama, and Alabama's got it a little bit different, and then Texas is doing its own sort of thing over there. So it's I totally understand. It's interesting how that works, isn't it?
It is. Can you do a Boston accent?
Not a good one. I mean, there's the usual like park the car. We're gonna be doing something like this. No, that's not good. That's not good at all. And it goes way too close to like the New Yorker. I'm not good at accents.
Well, you're a lot better than me. I'll just stick to my Geordie one.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. How close are you to Scotland?
Very close. So probably can drive to Scotland in under 2 hours.
Oh, cool. All right. Do you ever get mistaken for Scottish?
I have. So when I've been to past celebrations, I've had like people ask if I am from Scotland.
Gotcha. And you're like, no, I don't roll all of my R's.
And like, I'm sure Scottish people would feel very hard done by.
Sure. That's another accent I can't do. Scottish is really hard. It's just the R's. You roll every R. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Apologies to any Scottish listeners.
But what's going to be awesome is obviously as we do more episodes of this, and we have different people on from different areas, they're all going to be saying the term "Purely BELTA" in their own accent.
That's true. We'll see if anyone's is worse than mine. With the Purely Belter. No, that's not it, guys. That's not it. Purely BELTA. Is that close? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's acceptable.
Okay, I'll take acceptable.
So obviously we're all here chatting about Star Wars, and everyone's listening.
That's
to
right.
us chatting about Star Wars because we all think Star Wars is purely BELTA.
That's right. I sure do.
But within Star Wars, we all have those little things, or certain characters, or planets, or crime syndicates, or religions.
Mm-hmm.
All different kinds of things, creatures, spaceships, pod racers. We all have our thing that we really love the most. The thing that we really love find is purely BELTA.
Yep.
Brian, you're here today to talk about Qui-Gon Jinn.
That's right. You needed someone who doesn't enjoy things moderately, and somebody who knows a thing or two about Qui-Gon Jinn, and I'm the guy. I'm the go-to. I think he's purely BELTA. I do. I think he's the best.
So my first question for you is Qui-Gon the perfect Jedi?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I always describe Qui-Gon as like the Jedi who got it right. Because it's really easy to criticize the Jedi, especially in the prequels, because they lost their way, and there is no doubt about that, which was why Qui-Gon stood out so much. So yeah, I would say Qui-Gon is what the Jedi were, and he did not lose his way, and he, stuck to his guns whenever he could, and that was at odds with the Council at the time that we see them. So yeah, I would say so.
I would agree. I think obviously the prequel era is the fall of the Jedi.
Yep.
And obviously the Jedi Order in the prequels does appear to have lost their way. And I think in the Phantom Menace, the tensions between Qui-Gon Jinn and the Jedi Council are very visible.
Yep, 100%.
But I think one of the things I love about Qui-Gon Jinn is that although he thinks the Jedi have lost the way, and he thinks the way he does things is perhaps the right way.
Yep.
He doesn't leave. Like, you can't change things if you leave.
Absolutely.
If you look at his former master Dooku.
Yep.
Who did leave, and he couldn't change a thing.
Exactly.
And actually ended up turning to the dark side down the line. So I think obviously Qui-Gon, is the perfect Jedi because he never gives up.
Exactly. Which is a big part of being a Jedi. You know what I mean? And it also, it shows that he cared. You know what I mean? Like, the Jedi Order meant everything to Qui-Gon, which was why he lived the way that he lived and he operated the way that he did. Because, like, it mattered. You know what I mean? Dooku was a count. We know from Jedi Lost that, he still had some ties to his family back home. Like, he wasn't fully committed all the time, which was why when he left, he's like, yeah, guys, I'm out. Whereas Qui-Gon, like, he understood the importance of this. And even when he would argue with the council all the time, he's like, they're wrong, but, I'm still going to do my thing. He didn't let people who had lost their way. He didn't let people who had started twisting things and got uh on a different path than they probably should have been. He didn't let that ruin the thing. He wasn't like, the council is not paying attention to the Force, so I'm going to leave. He was like, no, they're not paying attention to the Force, so I'm going to pay attention to the Force. It's like his faith was the most important, and it was so sacred to him, being a Jedi, that he didn't allow anyone else to kind of color that for him, which is one of the things I admire about him the most.
Yeah, I remember watching The Phantom Menace, and you remember the tensions between him and the council.
Oh yeah.
And the slight tensions between him and Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sort of looking at it a little bit negatively on Qui-Gon.
Sure.
That's during The Phantom Menace, but I think after you watch The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, it becomes very clear that Qui-Gon was very much sort of doing things the right way, and the council were the ones who were doing things the wrong way.
I think so.
But during that first movie, before you've seen the next two parts, I remember playing that. I was a bit like, why is Qui-Gon being a bit of a awkward person here?
Sure. Yeah, you took Obi-Wan's side. You're like, man, if you just stop arguing with the council for 10 minutes, you'd be on the council. And he's like, I got to do what I got to do. That's funny.
Definitely. But I think, like I said, the bigger picture is once you've watched once you've watched 1, 2, 3, once you've watched Clone Wars, it becomes very apparent that Qui-Gon is very much in the right, really, and he's sort of saying, as a Jedi Order, we shouldn't be involved in too much politics.
Exactly. And just like, I feel like it's a big commentary on complicity. You know what I mean? And like complacency. Like specifically complacency. Because the Jedi Order got comfortable. They hadn't seen a Sith in over 1,000 years. Everything was fine. It's all just, oh, it's Thursday, so today's go to court day. Like, it's all routine at this point. And Qui-Gon never allowed it to become routine. He was always paying attention to the Force. He was always open to the idea that there's more going on than what he's seeing. And that's one of the many reasons that he's such a hero of mine, which is strange to say of a fictional character, but the impact was real. And the Jedi, that's what happened, was they became complacent. To where Qui-Gon's like, I'm pretty sure I saw a Sith. And they're like, it's been 1,000 years. It's like, they didn't even hear him out, because they're like, there's no way. It's been 1,000 years. It's something else. Don't worry about it. And then Qui-Gon is the one who's paying attention to the point where he finds the Chosen One. And they're just like, well, he's too old. It's like, what? The Chosen One. Like, there's prophecies about this. And like, yeah, well, rule number 4, he's too old. Sorry. We're going to choose the rules over what's right in front of our faces, which is what happens because you're complacent. You're so used to the peace that when something gets there that could rile the feathers, you're like, no, we'll just not really worry about it. And I think that was one of the biggest points of contention, was the Jedi became about the routine of everything. They got comfortable. And that's why Palpatine was able to do what he did, was because the Jedi got comfortable. And then through their comfortability, he was able to trick them into becoming generals, which is against the entire idea of what the Jedi Order is supposed to be. And Qui-Gon was the one that he was still paying attention when everyone else was comfortable.
Yeah, I've got a question about Clone Wars coming up soon, about generals as well, which I think you're going to love.
Nice.
But yeah, I think like you've hit the nail on the head there. Qui-Gon finds Anakin. He's not looking for Anakin. He's looking for hyperdrive.
Uh-huh.
T-40 Nubian, is that correct?
J-Type 327 Nubian.
There we go. Yeah. Got that wrong.
It's my favorite ship in all of Star Wars. So
it's very beautiful.
I got you. Yep.
So obviously, I know it's hinted at in is it Dooku Jedi Lost, that Qui-Gon does study the prophecies of the Force.
Yep.
And that puts him in a position where when he comes across Anakin, he's aware of this prophecy.
Yep.
And I feel that when he brings it to the Jedi Order, I think you can definitely tell that the Jedi, they probably know a little bit about this prophecy.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
But
I
they
mean, they
haven't.
kind of touch on it in Dooku Lost. Where they got in their complacency. Fear. Well, I guess fear is not exactly the right term, but it's like they didn't want. It was much easier to put it all in a bottle and not worry about it than acknowledge it. Because that's something that they really explore in Dooku Lost with Sifo Dyas. Was like, if you start paying attention to these prophecies and stuff, it'll drive you crazy because there's nothing you can do. So it's best not even to mess with it, which was kind of their stance by the prequels. But the problem is, you can't not acknowledge it. You know what I mean? And so, like, when the prophecy shows up, it's much easier to be like, well, he's too old so that we don't have to worry about this thing. Because if the chosen one showed up, we have to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think if you strip that situation down to its core, it's essentially this young boy who needs help, understanding his place in the world and his powers, and they're prepared to just go, no, he's too old. When really this boy needs help.
Yeah, it's true. And it's a tough. I mean, I'm a Jedi apologist all day long. Like, I've got the Jedi symbol tattooed on my arm, so I'm pretty into the Jedi and what they could be because of Qui-Gon. But like, they're also in a tough spot. I'm not going to make excuses for sitting on their seats when stuff's right in front of them. But with Anakin specifically, like Qui-Gon said, I'm not here to free the slaves. I'm here to get, and also to your credit, it was a T-14 hyperdrive inside of the Nubian. So you were half right.
Awesome.
I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
I'll give it to you. And yeah, it's complicated because Qui-Gon is there to get the hyperdrive, and then he finds this slave boy, but he recognizes there's something else here, right? And so he brings him before the council. It's like, I know for a fact this is the chosen one, but it's complicated. Like, I think it was in Master and Apprentice, where Qui-Gon talks to Yoda about slavery, and then he mentions, like, are we supposed to be okay with this? Because I'm not. And Yoda pretty much said, like, well, what about this species? This species, the entire reason they're alive is because their society is built on slavery, and that's just how the ecosystem works. And he pretty much, like, justifies not getting involved in slavery because if you did, then the entire planet would die and stuff like that. And like, it's a tough thing for Qui-Gon, right? As it should be for anyone. So it's an interesting thing for him to go so far above and beyond in believing in Anakin, so much so that he places this bet to try and get him freed, to bring him before the council, because it's bigger than this. He's the chosen one. It's the fate of the entire force we're talking about. I forgot where I was going with that.
I just think that I think you're 100% right by saying the Jedi become complacent. I think that they are set up to become complacent. I think the system that they end up becoming complacent in is all part of Palpatine's grand plan.
Absolutely.
And once they start getting involved for the right reasons in sort of government affairs, then you can't get back out of it for any reason,
Yes.
if that makes sense. And then I think Qui-Gon knows that. And I think that's why he sticks around. That's why he doesn't become one of the Lost 20. I think he stays around because he's like, I can't change the world sat at home on my couch, for example.
Yep.
But if I'm here, I know that I can make the correct decision. Sort of like Captain America in the MCU.
Right.
Where sort of, these Sokovian Accords come in and they've got to follow sort of a government regulations, and Cap goes, like, yes, bad things might happen, but we did things for the right reasons. If we've now got to start following committees can be influenced.
Yep.
Where I'm free to make my own decision one way or the other.
Yep.
I know I can always choose the right one if I want to.
Totally.
And I can never be asked to do something that I don't want to do because it's my decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is it in Master and Apprentice, which is the book by Claudia Gray, where I mean, we've mentioned two books here. We've mentioned Dooku Jedi Lost, which was a audio drama, which then is available in print, which I've read and is fantastic. And then there is the book by Claudia Gray, Master and Apprentice, I would say both have awesome Qui-Gon Jinn content. And if
Oh
you're a fan of
yeah,
Qui-Gon Jinn or you want to learn more about Qui-Gon, definitely visit these two books.
agreed.
But I think it's in Master and Apprentice where Qui-Gon mentions about sort of living with the light and the dark and how every day he can make the decision to do things for the right reasons and choose the light.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, my favorite Qui-Gon quote of all time is "Your focus determines your reality." Like I genuinely live by that. But I will say that quote there, which I happen to have saved. I'll actually read it right now. It says, "It matters which side we choose. Even if there will never be more light than darkness, even if there can be no more joy in the galaxy than there is pain. For every action we undertake, for every word we speak, for every life we touch, it matters. I don't turn towards the light because it means someday I'll win some sort of cosmic game. I turn toward it because it is the light." I live by that. Like it's the power of choice, and choosing the right thing, even when you know it's going to lose. It matters to choose the right thing. And that line there, that paragraph is Qui-Gon encapsulated, in my opinion. When the council is saying he's too old, we're not going to do this, he's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. We're saving the galaxy here. You know what I mean? This is prophesied in the Force. This isn't a political game. This isn't like, oh, well, we're trying to win this tiny war. It's like, no, this is bringing balance to the Force. This should be a priority of the Jedi, but it's not.
Definitely. And for me, I think it's that quote you just read about choosing the light because it is the light.
Yeah.
And having choices, I think, they say Star Wars is poetry and it rhymes. I think definitely if you play sort of Battlefront 2 and if you follow Luke Skywalker's journey after he becomes a Jedi Knight, he definitely promotes the idea of, you can always have a choice to be better. So
yeah.
even if you've done something bad or questionable or something you didn't like in the past, your next decision, you can make a better choice if you want to.
Always. That's so important. Like, I mean, George Lucas knew what was up, like that man was a visionary in every regard. So much so that, like, yeah, you're not who you were yesterday. In real life, you can change. Always. Every day is a new day. You can, just because you did something that you regret or don't agree with today that you did yesterday, do something different today. Like, it matters. And it can change your entire outlook on life, your decisions. You reap what you sow, so the decisions that you make will influence your future and your present a lot of the times. So it's like, put some thought into it. You have way more power in who you are as a person than you might think. And Qui-Gon's a great example of that, even at odds with his fellow Jedi. And I feel like it really shows.
Yeah, because I think, obviously, you could take the easy path and just sort of be quiet and just nod your head to what the
That's
Jedi Council are saying for an easy life. But he does have his say when the Jedi Council say or do something he disagrees with, he lets them know.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the hard choice, but it's also the correct choice.
Yeah, it matters. I love it. It's like one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing is when he says he'll train Anakin, because he's showing the council how much he believes in what he's talking about. He's sticking to his guns in front of the High Jedi Council, and they're like, well, he's too old. He goes, well, then I'll train him. Like, you already have a Padawan. He goes, well, he's ready. Like, you clearly don't see what's right in front of you, so I'm going to do this myself. And like, that's so cool. I love that. Like, I hope one day to be that confident in my choices as Qui-Gon was right there. And he doesn't like back down. Even afterwards, Obi-Wan's like, hey, listen, like, you could just like agree with him and it'd be easier. And he's like, I'll do what I must, Obi-Wan. I'm like, oh, it's so cool.
I think he also, when he says he'll take Anakin and train him himself as well, I think it's also him showing the council how easy it would be just to train him. Like, I mean, the training itself and the effort would be hard, but like the decision to decide to train the boy and help him is quite an easy one. You just need to decide to do it.
Yeah, totally.
But and the rules are there, and if you if you want to use the rules to say no, then they're there for you to use to say no. But you could just as simply make the decision to train the boy.
Mm-hmm. But then, like, see, this is where my Jedi apologist side comes out, because I understand the point of the rule. I don't 100% agree with it, but I get it on paper why it's there. You know what I mean? Because the point of getting them as a baby and then raising them up is so that you can kind of quench the anger that pops up. You know, like, there's an argument to be made that the reason Anakin turned to the dark side the way that he did was because, A, in my opinion, because Qui-Gon died, but B, because he had rage and fear and loss and anger and hate that was then fueled by, the disconnect between him and Obi-Wan in episode 2. There's 100 reasons why it happened. But I believe one of those reasons, the argument could be made that it's because he started his training too old. Because those emotions are kind of set in. But then again, the other side of that could be the reason the Jedi became complacent is because they were shown not to have emotion at an early age, and then they were emotionally stunted. It's complicated. But I love that Qui-Gon is like, if they're not going to let me train you, I'll just talk really loud and you just hang out near me. He's literally bending the rules right in front of everyone because he knows how important this is, and I love that. He starts training Anakin anyway. It's so awesome.
Definitely. So what's some of your favourite Qui-Gon moments from The Phantom Menace?
My favorite moment in all of Star Wars is when he meditates in the middle of the Duel of the Fates. Like, I don't think anything's ever going to top that. I mean, we'll see, but since then, that's my favorite moment, because they're in the middle of a life or death battle. They're in the middle of the reactor room with the the ray shields, ray doors, whatever, the energy doors, blocking them in between each other throughout the fight. And at the very end, when Darth Maul is in the end chamber and Obi-Wan is like 8 rows back and Qui-Gon's there, when he kneels down and centers himself and just like makes peace with whatever is about to happen, that's my favorite moment in all of Star Wars, because I think it is so powerful. And I like the juxtaposition between the Sith on the other side of that energy is walking around like a caged tiger, just waiting for the moment for it to open so he can just unleash, malice on top of him. But Qui-Gon, being the Jedi Master that he is, brings it back down and he centers himself. And it's just like, he was a true Jedi in that moment. And I just think it's so powerful to just give yourself over to the faith and like, okay, here it is. I understand. On the other side of this, when that opens, one of two things is going to happen. And I'm okay with either one. Let's do this. Like, it's so cool. So that's my favorite Qui-Gon moment. That's my favorite Star Wars moment in everything. But specifically Qui-Gon, that part right there. I also really love when Qui-Gon talks to Anakin about midichlorians. I really do. I love that he's this Jedi Master and this is a child, but he talks to him like an adult. I love that he gets down on his level and he's just like, yeah, here's what it's about. They're symbiotic organisms and we can hear them. They live in our cells and we hear the will of the Force through them. And, it'll make sense when you get older. Like, at no point does he talk down to him. At no point does he like dismiss him because he's a child. He talks to him like a person. And I just thought that was such a cool moment for Qui-Gon to show like who he is as a person and as a mentor, is just a cool visual representation of like, you want to know who Qui-Gon is? Watch this interaction. I like that a lot.
Do you think, obviously, throughout the Phantom Menace, we've already hinted on it, sort of you see the tension between Qui-Gon and the Council and Qui-Gon and Yoda.
Yep.
And obviously, we've hit upon, some of the Qui-Gon moments in other canon. So in Master and Apprentice, in Duke of Jedi Lost, where, he sort of has a disagreement with Yoda about slaves.
Yep.
With all that being said, do you think George Lucas is trying to tell us something when he decides that Qui-Gon Jinn is going to be the one to teach Yoda about the netherworld of the Force?
Yeah, I totally I mean, how cool is that? You know, I love the idea that Yoda is like, because Yoda is like top 3 favorite characters for me. I think he's awesome. But Yoda's like the perfect representation of where the Jedi kind of started sleeping. You know what I mean? And he learns that. You know, you get that from Yoda in episode 5 when he's like reminiscing about everything. And in episode 8, really, when he's like, yeah, when you fail, that's kind of how it goes. Like, he understands what he did. You know, and I don't think it was a conscious failure. It was just, you know, things you had to learn the hard way. I do like, that's one of the million reasons why Qui-Gon is my favorite character, is because he was the first Jedi ever. The Jedi were Jedi Knights for like 10,000 years, like forever. And he was the first one to figure out how to become one with the Force and retain your identity. He was the first one. And then he taught Yoda, who was a Jedi for like 900 years. And Qui-Gon's the one that taught him how to do it because they'd lost their way, you know? So it's a beautiful kind of poetic thing to do, to have the Jedi that maintained his faith, that kept everything the way that the Jedi are supposed to be, in love and respect and protection of all life, you know, and knowledge and wisdom and defense as opposed to attack. I love that it was Qui-Gon that figured it out, and that he trained Yoda and Obi-Wan and everyone else to keep it up. It's cool. It's like, it goes to show the importance of Qui-Gon Jinn as a Jedi, you know?
I think so. And I think it says a lot about how, you know, this is a guy who didn't agree with the council.
Yep.
The guy who you wouldn't begrudge him sort of not wanting to share that with the council, because, you know what, the decisions that you've made sort of made my life difficult, so I'm not going to help you now. But in fact, as soon as he can, he comes back and helps Yoda, just like a best friend.
Because that's what it's about. That's what Jedi are supposed to do, you know? And that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. That, I mean, he was always in service to the Force. Qui-Gon was, you know?
What's some of your favorite moments from Qui-Gon from the Clone Wars? Obviously, he obviously appears in that arc with Yoda.
Yep.
When Yoda finds out about how to sort of become one with the Force after death. We also see Qui-Gon Jinn in the Mortis arc.
Yeah, we do. I would say, I mean, the Mortis arc one was really, really big for me because I never thought I would see Qui-Gon again, you know, because he was only in episode 1. So that was huge because, you know, Liam Neeson also does the voice in the Clone Wars as well. So that was a moment. I was screaming at my screen. So that was great. And to have him be like, hey, like, did you train the boy? Did you figure this out? Like, we're still, even in death, Qui-Gon's still looking out for Anakin. You know, it's like, is he all right? Is everything cool, Obi-Wan? So I love that. But yeah, there's something special about him training Yoda. Like, Yoda's the Grand Master that trains generations upon generations of Jedi. So the fact that Qui-Gon, from the Force after life, is training the Grand Master, I think that's so cool.
Do you remember watching Attack of the Clones when it came out?
Yes.
And
yes, I do.
The scene when obviously Anakin is destroying the Tuskens, and it sort of cuts to the Jedi Temple, and Master Windu and Master Yoda are meditating together.
You hear him?
And Yoda can feel the pain of Anakin. And within the sound mix of that scene, you hear Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn, shout Anakin in a distressed tone. How much did that get you going in the cinema when you first heard it?
I freaked. It was one of those things where, like, did I just hear what I heard? Because, you know, like, this is my guy, so I can pick him out in a crowd. And yeah, I remember hearing that. It's like, Anakin, no! And that in the theater, I was like, oh, is that what? Because, you know, at this point, you know, we'd seen Force Ghosts, you know, from the originals, but I didn't think for a second that Qui-Gon was going to be one of those, because you didn't know at this time. And so, yeah, no, it was a few times I saw it before. I was like, that's him, right? Yeah, I think so, maybe. So, no, I was really excited. And then I was really bummed because he was supposed to be in episode 3. You know, there was a deleted scene where he talks to Yoda at the very end, right before Bail Organa comes in, and is like, "Hey, we got Obi-Wan." There was a scene between Yoda and Qui-Gon that got cut, and it got cut because, if I'm not mistaken, Liam Neeson was in like a motorcycle accident and he wasn't able to shoot. And I was like, "Oh man!" So it's in the book, if I remember correctly. There's like a
I
scene, and I was like so excited.
I didn't know that. That sounds absolutely awesome.
Yeah,
So is that in Matthew Stover's novelization of Revenge of the Sith?
I think so. It's been so long. You know what? I'm gonna look it up right now because this is great podcasting. Say Qui-Gon Jinn, Revenge of
Because that
the
scene would make perfect sense after, once we've seen Clone Wars and how Qui-Gon Jinn sort of trains Yoda how to become one with the Force, and then to have him talking to Yoda here before Bail Organa comes and let him know that they've got Obi-Wan, and then it would lead perfectly into the scene where Yoda tells Obi-Wan, "All training I have from your old master."
Mm-hmm.
It would be perfect
Mm-hmm.
symmetry.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I don't remember where it's from because this is bad podcasting. I don't want to like deep dive, but I do remember reading a scene that was like the craziest thing in the world. And I was like, what? Because there's a scene where Yoda's just meditating on Polis Massa, and then he just opens his eyes and turns back around toward Bale. And like, yeah, that scene. If I'm not mistaken, there was supposed to be a conversation between him and Qui-Gon. That would have been awesome.
That would have been absolutely fantastic. I think going back to that scene in Attack of the Clones when you hear Qui-Gon's voice, I was
Uh-huh.
always like, is that from Anakin's memory of
Oh,
Qui-Gon,
interesting.
or was it Qui-Gon from the dead? And I always wasn't quite sure. But
I think
you
it's
could
from the
see there,
dead.
but you could see George Lucas putting the sprinklings in there of like, going to tease this, and maybe he is going to be a Jedi Force ghost.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Little seeds. Yeah.
Because it was a bit like, if I remember correctly, in the Phantom Menace when they have the funeral pyre for Qui-Gon,
Yep.
He doesn't disappear. So it was sort of like, no, he's not going to become one with the Force. And then in Attack of the Clones, to do that, like I said, the voice sound bit in with that scene, and that's a bit like, oh, but is he going to be one? Is he not? Don't know. But it planted the seed for the
Right.
possibility. And then obviously, I said at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda drops the bombshell. Qui-Gon's learned how to communicate, and then obviously we get the Clone Wars arc afterwards, which fills in the time in between of Qui-Gon teaching Yoda how to do that.
Exactly.
So again, it goes to show just what a masterful storyteller George Lucas is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I found it. Yep. During early development of Revenge of the Sith, Lucas wrote a scene featuring a ghostly Qui-Gon speaking with Yoda about Anakin. Liam Neeson indicated that he was set to reprise his role, but the scene was deleted before being filmed, although it is retained in the film's novelization. So, yep. Boom. I was like, I know I
Anybody,
read it.
I think anybody who loves the prequels, I think needs to read the novelization of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
I read
agreed.
it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now.
Mhm.
And I don't have my original copy, so I need to buy a new one at some point. But just the level of detail that goes into this book, and the level of storytelling, and Matthew Stovano would get notes directly from George during the writing process of this book of like what to put in, what extra bits to put in that you couldn't put in a 2.5 hour film.
Sure.
That you can put in a novel, and it really does sort of drive home sort of the tension and the epicness of the fall of Anakin.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Obviously, we've hinted at Liam Neeson there in our conversation.
Yeah.
For me, I found Liam Neeson's performance like very grounded,
Oh, yeah.
an ultra real performance. And it was sort of a mix of he would play very serious and deadpan, but there would also be those sort of hippie vibes there.
Yep. Yep.
And
I loved it.
I think playing it that way was perfect and getting across that, this guy is super serious about what he's doing, but he doesn't
Yeah.
just go along with what he's told by his order. He will go with what he feels is correct, and what he's been told is correct. And it might make his life harder, but he's going to stand by his morals and what he thinks is correct.
Agreed. I like the duality that Liam Neeson brought to the role, because he is this serious Jedi Master that is not afraid to speak truth to power, but he also has this like warmth to him, which you don't see the entire movie, which I thought was really cool, because like you see the seriousness when he's with the council, or like when Jar Jar's like grabbing all the apples off the table and he just grabs it. He's like, "Don't do that again." Tiny little bits of like, "Oh right, he's a powerful Jedi Master who's been through a lot." But when he's with Anakin, he's like, "Hey, try this power source. Come over here. Here's what midichlorians are." He cares so much about Anakin that his dying words are, "Promise me you'll train the boy." As he's dying, he's like, "This is so important, not just for me, for everyone. Like, please train the boy." And so I think Liam Neeson also as an actor, he just is such a presence. That when he walks into the room, it probably helps that he's like 6'4", so he commands attention. But I think he was a great example of a Jedi who, like, he was always on a mission. That's the other thing about Qui-Gon. He was very focused on everything he was doing, and he believed not only in himself but in the will of the Force, to the point where, like, he even tells like Padme when she's the handmaid, outside of Watto's shop, was like, "The Queen doesn't need to know. Like, she trusts my judgment. It's fine." And then she's like, "Well, I don't trust you." It becomes this thing where he's like, "We'll take care of it. We'll gamble. We'll bet the ship. We'll do all these things." Like, it's I love that. That's something I try myself to be more like. Sure of my decisions, sticking to my guns regardless, believing in myself. Like, that's something I feel like Qui-Gon emulates very well. He's just great.
Yeah, I think obviously such an important character, although we only get him for one movie. But he is the character that sets
All of
Anakin's
it.
journey in motion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously sets Obi-Wan Kenobi's journey in motion. Obviously, a character we know from the original trilogy.
Uh-huh.
And I think to bring in someone of the caliber of Liam Neeson for the
Yeah.
role was
Totally.
just a genius stroke.
I agree. You needed someone that had that sort of, because Qui-Gon also has, like, I mean, it might just be me, but he has this kind of regalness about him, which was something that Christopher Lee also had. It's like just them command respect. It was such a cool idea, and it was different than anything that we'd seen.
I think as well. I think obviously Qui-Gon is the sort of the, as we've said, the perfect Jedi, and he chooses the light because it is the light.
Yep.
And up until that point, obviously, I think Liam Neeson always played sort of good characters, light characters.
Yep.
I don't think it was until 2005, Batman Begins, when Liam Neeson finally played like a villain type character.
Sure.
And obviously, those listening today will know Liam Neeson from the sort of the revenge action movies that he's now portrays
Yep.
and makes his bread and butter in, which he's very good at.
Uh-huh.
But this Qui-Gon Jinn, this time in 1999, so you put this sort of super serious but always good character.
Oh yeah.
In the perfect role.
I agree. Like I said, it's somebody that commands a presence is what you need. This is coming off of like Oscar Schindler and Rob Roy McGregor, and these heavy dramatic roles that he's able to do so well. To make him a Jedi Master, I thought was just a beautiful choice.
And I think it says a lot about sort of his understanding of story, because I think, you've just mentioned some of his roles there, like, absolutely fantastic, brilliant, serious performances in movies that are considered some of the best movies on the planet.
Agreed.
Made by some of the masters of filmmaking. And I think, we know, because we're in the bubble, just how sort of tragic and serious, and how much sort of drama and sort of Shakespearean and also like ancient myth is in Star Wars. It isn't just this sort of funny sci-fi movie, although it is, but it's also not. It's also this very sort of very serious, dramatic, very human, emotionally driven. And I think for
Right.
someone of Liam Neeson's caliber at the time to sort of meet with George and go through the script and to see that, I think it's fantastic. It says a lot about him as a guy rather than just seeing it as like, oh well, no, I don't want to do a Star Wars because it's a bit silly.
Right.
He actually saw like actually, if you actually like watch these movies and dive into these stories, it's actually like so much more human than you'll ever know.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I agree.
Obviously, we mentioned the Clone Wars before, and this is the question that I referenced earlier on in our conversation, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Qui-Gon knows the Council sort of have their hands tied sometimes by the way the Senate works,
Yep.
and he knows that they make the wrong decisions because of this. Do you think, had Qui-Gon sort of lived during the times of the Clone Wars and to see the Clone Wars start,
Mm-hmm.
do you think Qui-Gon would have become a Jedi General?
Ooh. See, my knee-jerk reaction is no. But this is the genius of Palpatine, right? So what he did was the Jedi were wrong to get involved in politics as much as they did, right? I imagine the reason they started was to do good, right? Because when there are people that are in need and they need some help, they need a little bit of extra help, from maybe a Jedi, then the Republic can dispatch a Jedi to help these people. That was originally the idea, I think. And what Palpatine did so beautifully was turn the Jedi into generals, right? Made them a military, which they are not. And the problem was they had this unlimited supply of battle droids and just started attacking planets, right? So then the Jedi had to go help them. Your job is to help people in need. And so the Jedi walked right into the trap. It's a genius for Palpatine to be like, hey, droid armies are attacking the Outer Rim. Are you going to just let them all die and get captured, or are you going to send someone out to help? And the Jedi were like, well, I mean, we got to help them, right? So then they made the clones because they had to compete because, a Jedi's worth 1,000 battle droids, but there's 20,000 battle droids. So you need a clone army as well to keep up with it. And then they're implanted with the chips that will eventually kill the Jedi. So it's just, Palpatine's playing 3D chess over the course of 50 years. So I think Qui-Gon would not want to, but I think Palpatine was so smart in playing the Jedi that I think what happened would have happened anyway because of mentally where the Jedi were. You know what I mean? And that they were so easily played. So, yeah, I don't think he'd be happy about it. But I think if there was a planet that was in need, he would have helped.
Yeah, I think that's what the genius of the clone army is. I think, had that emergency Senate hearing, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to get a Grand Army of the Republic. We're getting these clones in." I think that's a much harder sell to the Senate if it's a case of we've just bought this army and it's going to go and fight for us. But they're actually like, we've just bought this army and it's going to fight for us. But the Jedi, who are our guardians of peace and justice for like the centuries, are going to be the ones running it. And I think that puts the Senators at ease to dive in as well.
Totally.
I've just got a feeling Qui-Gon would not. I don't think he would left the order necessarily, but I think he would really went, I'm not going to lead an army. Like, I'll stay here and do Jedi business, and I'll go and and when worlds cry out for aid or there's problems, I'll go and do body business. But I will not go and lead these battalions of clones on other planets.
But I agree. I think he would not. Yeah, he would not be happy about it. He would definitely. I mean, if he was fighting just to get Anakin trained, I think he would definitely make his thoughts known. But yeah, it's a tough spot, isn't it? It's a tough spot. It's like you're supposed to be helping people all the time. Well, people are needing your help, but it's a trap. It's all a trap that Palpatine planned. So I agree with you. I don't think he would have left the order. I think he would have made his grievances known for sure. I don't think he'd be happy about it. I think he would help in any way he could, but yeah, I don't think he would take on the mantle of general. Although I think he would be a great general. When he's talking about infiltrating Theed, to help the people and doing the battle plans and talking about the Gungan army versus their army, like I think he was a great tactician. But yeah, morally, I think he would be at odds with the whole Clone Wars, and he would actually say something about it.
I think he learns a lot from everybody he encounters, doesn't he? So obviously, he learned a lot from Yoda. Doesn't necessarily agree with Yoda, but he learns a lot from Yoda. Learns a lot from his master, Count
Yep.
Dooku.
Mm-hmm.
I would even go as far as to say I think he learns a lot from Dooku's first Padawan, Rael Avaros.
Oh yeah, I love Rael. He's so cool.
So obviously, Rael was Dooku's first Padawan who became a Jedi Knight. So then Dooku took a second Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, and they're very, very different people. And when they meet, you obviously get that how different they are. But there's also like a respect there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of they've both been through the same ordeal with Count Dooku, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And if Dooku saw something in these two people, obviously Dooku was a great Jedi.
Yep.
And I think they have even though they're very different, they have a lot of respect for each other. I think Qui-Gon takes something from everybody he meets, because everybody sort of has a good quality.
Yep.
How did you interpret? Obviously, when they introduced Rael Avaros and they introduced the differences, how did you find their interactions?
I loved it. He's kind of a, and it was interesting because I listened to it. I got the audiobook because I just love audiobooks, and he's like a cowboy sort of Jedi, and he like. It was funny to see someone who made Qui-Gon look like the rule follower. You know what I mean? Because Rael is like hooking up with people and he's playing his own sort of thing. And he's like, I'm the regent, I'm kind of in charge here and I'm doing my thing. You're like, wait, that guy's a Jedi? Like, is that allowed? So it was interesting because Dooku obviously swung way over, right? So he was this Jedi that was great, and then was like, I'm just going to do my own thing. But he did his own thing, but to the detriment of being a Jedi, right? He's like, I'm going to study these prophecies. I'm going to do whatever I want. So his first Padawan would be this like wild sort of, there are no rules. Qui-Gon does believe in the rules. He just thinks that they should be malleable to the situation. Whereas it seemed like Rael was like, there's no rules. Come on, let's be honest. So it was a great interaction between the two, and I really loved. There's the scene where Rael is pretty much explaining to Qui-Gon who Dooku is, because Qui-Gon was still a Padawan at the time, and he pretty much is like, yeah, Dooku, he can be a little standoffish and not really get into him, but just trust me, he knows what's best. And I thought that was cool, just an insight of a previous student into understanding the master. That was pretty cool.
Do you get tears when we see that scene in Clone Wars where it's sort of a mock future or a mock present, and it's the Jedi are outside, I think they're near a fountain, and Yoda's there, Qui-Gon's there, Dooku's there, Obi-Wan's there, Anakin's there, and it's like, what would happen if there was no Sith?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I cry pretty easily when it comes to things. It's funny, in real life I don't cry like ever, but when I'm watching stuff, I like turn all those things off and I'm like, all right, let's just feel. And it's not difficult for me to feel, especially if that's something I care about.
Would you say that you feel and don't think?
Yes, I would. That's exactly what I do when I'm watching things. Yeah, I didn't even realize. Would you look at that? I use my instincts, Peter.
That's the one.
Yeah. So for sure. I mean, anytime Qui-Gon comes up, I get emotional. I'll be honest with you. Like in Episode 9, when Rey hears all the Jedi, there's a Qui-Gon line, and I was like, oh, he's still there. I'm an emotional man, Peter.
What did you make of that? Obviously, that scene when obviously all the Jedi are speaking to Rey.
Yeah.
We get a lot more Jedi than who we know have become one with the
Yes, we
Force.
do. Yeah.
Do you think Qui-Gon Jinn has told all these Jedi how to do it?
So here's my theory, right? Because he trained Yoda, he trained Obi-Wan, right? But we hear Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Kanan, Luminara Unduli. Like, we hear a lot of people. And we know Luminara Unduli, like, they used our body in Rebels, which was dark. So what I think about, I don't know. I'll start with that. I have no idea, right? But my theory is somebody asked George Lucas one time how Anakin was able to become a Force ghost. Because he had no training or anything, and then when he died, he showed up. And George Lucas said he had help from the other side. That was his answer. So he's like, Obi-Wan and Yoda helped Anakin's spirit kind of keep on, right? So I'm assuming Qui-Gon was able to help from the other side, Luminar Unduli and Kanan and Ahsoka, assuming she's dead at that point, because she could be, but she also could not be. Who knows? To grew to live a long time. She could be communicating through some force thingy like Grogu did on the rock to reach Luke. Who knows? I don't know. But it did make me happy to hear Qui-Gon again.
I think it was sort of perfect use.
I think so.
And I think, although we don't get a lot of Liam Neeson after the Phantom Menace, I think they do bring him back for very significant parts. Like I said, in Clone Wars, they bring him back twice. They brought him back for Attack of the Clones for one line, and then obviously they bring him in here for one line as well.
Yep.
Do you think we will get Liam Neeson reprising the role, whether it's in person or whether it's just a voiceover for the upcoming Kenobi series?
God, I hope so. I think so. I will be very surprised if he's not, because the last time we saw Obi-Wan on screen as Ewan McGregor, right? Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan was dropping Luke off, right? The scene right before that was Yoda telling Obi-Wan, "I'll teach you how to commune with your old master." So it would make sense to me if we get Qui-Gon. Now, I'm totally down if they went like the Kenobi book route, where he doesn't come in until the very end, where the whole series is just him trying to communicate with Qui-Gon, but it isn't working, and then he's got to kind of still his mind and figure that out. I'd be okay with that.
Is that the Kenobi book by John Jackson Miller?
That's the one. Yeah, pretty much the whole book is him trying to communicate with Qui-Gon, and it doesn't happen till the end. Spoiler alert.
I think that would fit in perfectly with The Rise of Skywalker, where we see Rey is trying to communicate with the Jedi in the film, and it's not working, and she's getting frustrated. But then at the end, she manages to do it, or they're there for her. When they really needed.
Exactly. I will say that my biggest dream is a Force Ghost Qui-Gon, because I remember asking one time, this was years ago, because in the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon mentions that he can't show himself because he didn't complete his training, right? So that was always one of my biggest oh man, that would have been cool, but all right. So he could never be a Force Ghost, so he had to show himself through the lights, or a voice, that we hear. But I would love to see a fully realized Force Ghost Qui-Gon Jinn. That's pie in the sky, one of my biggest dreams that I don't think will ever happen, but I would love that, to see him again. I mean, that would just be the greatest thing in the world.
I think it might happen. I think if they're going to bring Liam Neeson in to do a voice,
yep,
I think I can see them doing a Force Ghost. Even though I know it might maybe, I don't know if it's the right term, but retcon something that's been briefly mentioned before. I can just see them doing it if it fits. Take The Rise of Skywalker, somehow Palpatine returned.
Right.
It doesn't really need fully explaining for it to be involved in the story, if that makes sense.
That's a great point I hadn't thought about. Yeah, they brought Palpatine back. We could do a Force Ghost Qui-Gon. We could figure it out. Although it was Qui-Gon himself that said, "I didn't finish my training." So maybe I don't know. Maybe he can still train somehow, from the other side.
Well,
I don't know. These are just dreams.
here's an idea, because obviously, George said that, someone helped Anakin from the other side.
Yeah.
Now that there's more Force ghosts on Qui-Gon's side, maybe
Mhm.
they can help him.
Maybe. I hope. We'll see. I'm so excited.
Have you got a favorite piece of Qui-Gon Jinn merchandise?
Yes. So that I own or that I've seen?
So tell me the favorite pieces you own, and then we'll ask what are your bucket list items that you want.
Okay, my favorite thing that I own is I have a lot. I have a Larble Qui-Gon Jinn lightsaber, which is pretty rare for anyone that collects lightsabers. You know what? My favorite, I think I've told this before on another podcast, but at Celebration 6, there was a booth for Cardamundi, which is this company that made like specialty trading cards and stuff like that. And so they did this thing where if you went to their booth every day, you got a card. And it was like Obi-Wan, Anakin, Queen Amidala, and Darth Maul, right? And if you went all 4 days of the con, you got a different card every day. And if on the 4th day you had all of the cards, you got a 5th card, which was Qui-Gon Jinn. And I have that card. It's like a holographic sort of card. It's really cool. I'm looking at it right now. That's one of my all-time favorite things, because it was like, I don't know, it's like I earned it, you know what I mean? Like throughout the whole week, because I got all of them. I got these, and it's like, I don't know. It's just really cool. It's a small thing. Like, it's not worth anything, but it's really cool. I like it a lot.
That
So
that
that's
is
my
really
favorite
sweet,
today.
because it's like it's your favorite character.
Yep.
You had to go there every day for 4 days,
Yep.
and then you got it. So not only did it cost you nothing, which is they're the best bits, I think, when when you have
I agree.
on eBay or anything, and you went every day and you followed the rules to sort of get that awesome Qui-Gon Jinn card. I think that's a fantastic story and a really, really cool piece of merchandise.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite that I own. A bucket list thing. I mean, if money's no object, I would love, like, there's in the prop store and some people's collections, they have, the actual Qui-Gon lightsabers that were used. But as far as commercially available, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not sure. Not a good answer. Like, part of me wants like the Qui-Gon's Hot Toys, but like, I don't know. I've never been one that's really big on like statues. Like, I think they're really cool. Maybe I just don't have like a really cool way to display it, and that's why I don't have the need for it. But I'm down for pretty much most most Qui-Gon. If it's Qui-Gon, I like it.
Have you seen the Hasbro Black Series 6-inch Qui-Gon Jinn that's been released on the original Episode 1 card for the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm?
I have not. I saw the Black Series Qui-Gon they did a few years ago, and that looked great.
So I
But
don't
I've
know
not.
if it's a repaint of that figure or not, but it might be a repaint, it might be a new sculpt, I don't know.
Sure.
But the re-releasing Qui-Gon Jinn, he comes,
Mhm.
so he's the 6-inch Hasbro Black Series Qui-Gon Jinn, and he comes on the Phantom Menace Episode 1 red and black card with Maul.
Right. That's so cool. Yeah, one day.
So I've just pre-ordered mine this morning, actually.
Nice.
If you have a look and you can't find one, just drop us a message and I'll pre-order you one.
Sure. Yeah, I'll let you know.
But it looks pretty sweet. It's funny because I've got a story about the original figure, so the original 3/4 inch Qui-Gon Jinn on the Phantom Menace card from 1999. I remember us going to Toys R Us because the Phantom Menace figures were getting released.
Sure.
And like my friend's mum took us to Toys R Us, and we went
Nice.
in like I don't think we fought over it. I think we both clocked that there was like one Jedi figure left, and we didn't know who these characters were yet. The movie wasn't out.
Right.
So there's Qui-Gon Jinn's on the shelf, and he's like the last one there with the Jedi, like with the lightsaber, and we sort of both see him at the same time, and sort of both go to grab him. And I don't remember a fight, but like I ended up getting the figure. So I'm guessing I grabbed it first.
There you go.
But I remember like being absolutely like ecstatic that like I had this Jedi Knight or Jedi Master, even like with the green lightsaber. And it was like, don't know anything about this guy, but like he's in the Jedi robes, he's got the lightsaber, he's got the long hair, and just being like
Yeah.
ecstatic that I had it.
Uh-huh. That's so
Um,
cool.
But yeah, so that's one of my like first memories of sort of the build up to Phantom Menace in 1999.
Sure, sure.
Do you have sort of take me? I think we've mentioned two of them. Sort of your favorite Qui-Gon Jinn quotes.
Yes.
Is there any others?
Ooh. I mean, yeah, my favorite Star Wars line of all time is your focus determines your reality. I've never thought about like a second place because I like all of it. You know, I really like the very beginning when he says don't center on your anxieties, keep your concentration here and now where it belongs. Because I could use that a lot. I lived so much of my life by Qui-Gon and like wisdom that he had, because like it's crazy. George Lucas wrote these things, but like I don't know if George Lucas. I mean, he's just like an extraordinary human being that was tapped into something when it came to Qui-Gon. You know, because Obi-Wan says like, Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future. He says, yeah, but not at the expense of the moment. That's the one. Not at the expense of the moment. Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs. And like, I love that. It's like be aware of the future, but not at the expense of the moment. Because it's like Qui-Gon was all about living in the moment, looking at what's right in front of you and acting accordingly. And I think that's how he really lived his life. And I think that's how another reason him and the Jedi bumped heads all the time. Because they weren't looking at Anakin right in front of them. They were looking at the rules, and like so concentrated on the future of, well, he's got anger and fear and like, that could be a problem. It's like, yeah, but look at him right now. Let's handle this and not worry about the future. Be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment. That's another big one.
Where does he rank in sort of your idea of the most prominent Jedi? Obviously, I know he's your favorite Jedi, but obviously,
Yeah.
the most prominent Jedi. So you have obviously Yoda, Master Windu,
Right.
Master Kyrie Mundi. Do you think he sort
Sure.
of outranks a lot of those guys?
I think it's tough to rank when it comes to things like that because I feel like they, at this point, were playing different games. I will say, as far as like being pivotal to the Jedi Order or like influenced what the Jedi became from there on out, I think he's the most important Jedi. Obviously, I'm biased, but the fact that he found the chosen one, the fact that he recognized it, the fact that he was the first one to become one with the Force and retain his identity, the fact that he trained others to do so, I would say he was the most influential Jedi on the Jedi Order in recent memory.
Have you seen Dave Filoni's interview talking about the Duel of the Fates?
Yeah, it's golden. It's like I've been saying that stuff for like 20 years, and I'm like, finally, someone gets it. Yeah.
Do you want to fill our listeners in on sort of on what Dave's thoughts were on the Duel of the Fates battle?
I mean, essentially, his whole thing was he was fighting for Anakin. He was fighting for the future of the Force and for everything. That it all came down to this moment, which I loved. Which actually was another reason you want to talk about like getting emotional and like freaking out. Another Qui-Gon appearance per se was in the final fight between Ben Kenobi and Maul. Because Obi-Wan tricked Maul by getting into Qui-Gon's stance and just handled him. It was such a cool homage to his master that I really, really loved. But yeah, no, I will not do a great job trying to what's the word when you like paraphrase Dave Filoni. So anyone listening, go listen for yourself because he's so much more eloquent than I could be, and it's great.
I think another moment for me, which it's an Obi-Wan Kenobi moment,
Sure.
but it reminded me a lot of Qui-Gon Jinn and how much Qui-Gon meant to Obi-Wan, how he brought up and raised and taught Obi-Wan. I don't know if you've read the Obi-Wan Anakin one-off volume, the comic book from Marvel Comics. So it's set in between episodes 1 and episodes 2, and it shows you Obi-Wan Anakin going on a mission. It also shows you like behind the scenes of like Palpatine grooming Anakin from an early age.
Yep.
On Coruscant. But there's a bit where like Anakin's thinking about leaving the Jedi Order. And you know, it shows you Obi-Wan's reaction to that, and Obi-Wan's reaction is, if the boy leaves, I'll leave as well, because I'll leave and still teach him, because that's what Qui-Gon wants. I think for me, to show you how powerful Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon's bond was, even though we do see them maybe be a little bit awkward with each other in the Phantom Menace, sort of as Obi-Wan's getting older and ready to sort of face the trials, and they do have certain disagreements. But it does show you just how much Qui-Gon meant to Obi-Wan.
Absolutely.
How did you feel when you were reading Master and Apprentice, and there's moments in that book where sort of Qui-Gon's dealing with the idea that maybe he's not good enough to teach Obi-Wan?
Yeah. I love that book. I was so excited because I remember years prior somebody asked me what my dream book would be, and I was like, I want a Qui-Gon Obi-Wan book by Claudia Gray. It's what I always wanted. So it was funny, around that time, Master and Apprentice came out, and there was the Age of the Republic comic series going on, and Qui-Gon's issue came out around that time as well. And it was just this, like, I felt like Disney and Lucasfilm were like spying on my dreams and just making them all come true, because everything that I had asked for was like all happening. So I was really excited. But I love the book. I think Claudia Gray gets Star Wars. I think she understands what it is, and I don't even fully know what that is. It's a feeling. It's an intangible thing that when you see it, when you read it, when you hear it, you know it. And I think Claudia is the best at it. I really do. Not to disparage anyone else, but I think she's just the greatest. And so reading Master and Apprentice, I was really excited because it's just more Qui-Gon. Anytime I get more Qui-Gon, I'm just over the moon. And the fact that it was done by her and it was done so well, it was Christmas. It was awesome.
What happens? I've not read the Qui-Gon issue of the Age of Republic comics.
Yeah.
What do we get in there? Anything cool?
Oh, tons of cool stuff. You get like this giant plant that's like being corrupted by the dark side and all. It's awesome. I'm not going to ruin it for you because it's really good. But I will tell you, that's another one of my favorite things that I own is I have the first issue of that. And it's not my favorite because like, oh, it's issue number 1 and it's in a little package and everything, but the contents. So obviously I'm obsessed with Qui-Gon Jinn. That's my guy, has been my entire life. Really excited. So we get a Qui-Gon comic that's canon. So excited. I open it up and the title is Balance. So I was like, what? Because for those that don't know, my last name is Ballance. I've got 2 L's though. So I was really excited about that because I was like, oh my God, look, it's a Qui-Gon comic and it's called Balance. All right. And then the opening page is Qui-Gon in the middle of like a firefight and he's blocking blast bolts and everything. And the planet that they're on is spelled BRI'N. I was like, what is going on? It's called Balance and he's on the planet Brian? And I was just freaking out, putting my tinfoil hat on, be like, everyone look, it was made for me. So excited. And it's a great comic. And then I actually reached out to the writer, Jody Hauser. And I was like, hey, so just curious, how'd you come up with the name for this planet? Because, I'm just curious, no other reason why. And she was like, I don't know. She's like, I just kind of thought of it. She's like, my dad's name is Brian. So I named after him. And I was like, good enough for me. So it is Brian, which is super exciting. Like, it doesn't mean anything, but it is really cool.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. I'll have to find that comic and read it. I do have. I only got it recently.
Hmm.
So I managed to purchase the original first edition's 6-issue run of the Phantom Menace comic book run from Dark Horse.
Nice.
So there's a Qui-Gon cover in there, which is I do. I think I'm gonna get them all framed in one frame, like 1 to 6, one
Cool.
day, put on my house.
Sure.
But yeah, that was pretty cool to get.
Yeah.
Where do you see sort of the, Kenobi aside, we're probably going to get some Qui-Gon and Kenobi, but other than the Kenobi series, sort of, where do you see the future of Qui-Gon Jinn storytelling coming from?
That is a great question. I do not have the answer. I will say that I'm down for all of it. Anytime Qui-Gon is involved, as far as I'm concerned, it's just been incredible. I have literally no notes at all. I think he's the most important character to me personally, and I think everything that we've seen so far has fit with him. I just anytime he comes up, I'm down for more. Yes, please. So I don't know what their plans are. I mean, even if we never get him again, I'd be like, that's okay because everything that I have is great. I would like to see him more, but hey, I'm just happy to be here.
I think one of my favorite moments in the Phantom Menace is, and it sort of has a direct effect on the end of the movie in a positive way, is when Qui-Gon tells Anakin to stay in the cockpit.
Yep.
And without him doing that, Anakin probably doesn't blow up the droid control ship and shut down all of the droids
Yep.
on Naboo, and we don't get the happy ending.
Uh-huh. Exactly. That's what I mean. Qui-Gon's the key to all of this. Like, he started everything. It's great. He's great.
He just has some wonderful moments. I think one of my other favorite moments is at the beginning when he's cutting through the door to the bridge on the droid control ship.
Yep.
And they shut the blast doors from the inside.
Uh-huh.
Sort of, you see him sense it and hear it, and he sort of takes a moment, and then he plunges the saber into the middle to sort of address the changing situation. And again, it goes back to sort of, have your mind sort of there and now where it's needed. Sort of feel, don't think, use your instincts. And again, what you said, every line that George sort of wrote for him, all of it sort of is going in one direction, and then the character's actions sort of match everything he's saying.
Yeah.
And it's like the opposite of the Jedi Council at this point, where they're like, oh yeah, we are going to be good and help people, but then they're like, oh, but we can't help the boy because he's too old. Not because we don't want to, but just because he's too old. You know what I mean? It's like, and they let excuses get in the way of things, where Qui-Gon says things and then lives by them and does them.
Yep.
It's sort of two very different philosophies going on.
It is. It's great. I love it. And it also shows, specifically that moment where he's cutting through the door, it shows his patience. He's concentrating. He doesn't look riled up. He doesn't look tired. He doesn't look like he's flustered at all. He's just, okay, they shut the doors. Well, we'll heat it up. He's just so calm. It's so awesome.
I think, and then even in death, he's not worried about dying. His only concern when he's dying is that someone needs to look after Anakin and train the boy.
Yep.
So again, sort of very. We like to see that the perfect Jedi is 100% selfless. I think few Jedi become that. I think obviously Ian Kanan does that. I think Luke Skywalker does that after Return of the Jedi, and then does it again in the events of The Last Jedi.
Agreed.
And then I think Qui-Gon is selfless right here.
Totally. I mean, that's kind of the point. You know what I mean? I've talked to some people before that you know what? Another favorite quote of mine, just to throw that out there, of Qui-Gon's is when he explains realistically what it means to be a Jedi to Anakin. Where he says, becoming a Jedi is not an easy challenge. And even if you succeed, it's a hard life. And I always love that because, one, he's just talking to Anakin straight. He's like, these are just facts. This is how it's going to go. but also like the point, in my opinion, the job of a Jedi is to stand between the evil of the galaxy and the good people, right? That's your job. It is about sacrifice, it is about selflessness, and that is what it is. And I think that my favorite moment in all of Rebels is Kanan saving Hera from the explosion. Because that's where a Jedi is supposed to be. When you become a Jedi, that's where the road ends. That's where you're supposed to be. Where good people are in danger and you literally hold back an explosion to save them, risking and sacrificing your own life. It's sacrifice. That's what it is. And so I think Qui-Gon exemplifies that. And then passes that on. Obi-Wan does it in episode 4. Because he knows that, Luke needs to get away. I need to distract Darth Vader. All right, here we go. Boop. It's so powerful to be there, and that's what a Jedi does.
I think there's something magical in that scene as well, where Obi-Wan does sort of do the selfless act of allowing himself to be destroyed so that the Millennium Falcon can escape the Death Star. Is that the last thing he sees when he sort of grins? Is he sees Luke and Leia together?
Yep.
And it's like,
yep.
He knows. What it is. You know what it is, Darth? These two are together now, and the galaxy's going to change. Whether I die here or I don't, if these guys can get off this Death Star, I trust in the Force.
Agreed. Job well done. That's what they do.
And again, that's sort of direct from Qui-Gon's teachings.
Exactly.
Being there in the moment. He's not thinking about how can I escape the situation. He's like, he spots them together.
Mm-hmm.
And then he knows what this could lead to for the goodness of the galaxy.
Exactly.
And then
and also surrenders himself. You know what I mean? Like he trusts the Force that he's going to come back. Like he knows what he's doing. That's why he smiles. It's so awesome.
I think that's pretty much all of the Qui-Gon Jinn questions I had.
All right, we did it.
Yeah, Brian, have you got any closing thoughts about? Well, let's just if you could sum it up, why do you think Qui-Gon Jinn is purely Belta?
I'll tell you why, Peter. I think Qui-Gon Jinn is purely Belta because I think he exemplifies what a Jedi should be. I think he exemplifies what a Jedi could be when they ascend beyond their physical selves. I think he's a great example of love and respect and pure faith and sticking to your guns. And I just think he's the best, and I want to be like him.
And I think that is absolutely perfect way to sum up why Qui-Gon Jinn is purely Belta. Brian, I just want to say thank you very much for coming and being the first guest on
Of course.
the Purely Belta series.
Thank you. It is always a joy when anyone allows me to ramble about the greatest Jedi of all time. And it is an honor to be the first, episode 1, coincidentally. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's always a good time hanging out with you.
Definitely. I think you'll probably like this actually. I remember going to it was like an Art of Star Wars exhibition in Edinburgh. Probably more than 15 years ago now. And they had a Star Wars UK fan club t-shirt available for sale.
Sure.
I bought it, and it had Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan from the prequels with their lightsabers out, and like Luke from Return of the Jedi with his out, and the like collage and together. It looked like it was like a similar scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking that's like 3 awesome Jedi on one t-shirt. It was like my favorite t-shirt when I was a kid.
It's awesome.
And like it didn't mind us that like these are generations apart. I was just like, like this is the Jedi Order. Like these are the Jedi Knights here. And I remember just really loving that idea.
Yeah, I'm in.
Do you want to let the people know about your Star Wars podcast?
Sure, yeah. I am very lucky enough to be a co-host on the Dorky Diva show. It is a Star Wars podcast where myself and my co-host Savannah Odit and I argue about Star Wars. And she's great. I'm sure if anyone has listened to this, you've probably also listened to Peter's other shows, which are fantastic. We were very happy to be guests recently to talk about our audio drama, The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which you can check out over there. We got a lot of cool Star Wars stuff going on at the Dorky Diva Show.
And what about your non-Star Wars podcast?
Yes. I also host a show myself called The Interesting Podcast, which is a show where I talk to anyone whom I find interesting, from FBI negotiators to Oscar-winning visual effects artists, writers, directors, my dad, a bunch of people. There's a little something in there for everyone. For your audience, there's been a bunch of Star Wars guests on, just because I'm a big Star Wars fan, clearly. I've had Taylor Gray, Vanessa Marshall, Ahmed Best, Brian Sipe, who's the head of the makeup department for The Mandalorian, Misty Rosas, who was the Frog Lady and Queel in Mando. Bunch of people. Check it out. I'd appreciate it.
And you have a short movie available on YouTube, is that right?
I do. Yeah. I forgot about this. I'm so bad at plugging myself, Peter. Yeah, I've also got a bunch of stuff that I do. I'm an actor, voice actor as well. You can check out brianballance.com. There's all kinds of stuff there. I had a short film come out recently called Blisters, which is on Vimeo and YouTube, and it's on my site as well. It's a Western that I'm really, really proud of. It's currently doing the festival circuit. So yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, it's not Star Wars connected, but it's some of the stuff I do. Check that out at brianballance.com.
And where can the people find you on social media, Brian?
And yeah, you can find me at Jedi Brian everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Jedi Brian. Easy peasy.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. You've been Purely BELTA on this episode, so I appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Does Purely BELTA, or does that can be like an adjective as well? Like, I've had a Purely BELTA time.
I think
Is
so.
that allowed?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. I've had a great time.
Well, no, thank you very much for coming on. I think Qui-Gon Jinn is definitely Purely BELTA.
Yeah. Agreed.
Listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. Brian, thank you very much for coming on. I hope everybody's staying safe out there. Obviously, although we're hopefully coming to the end of COVID and the pandemic, please just keep being safe out there, washing your hands, keeping your distance. The vaccines are rolling out across the world now, and hopefully it won't be long before we can all meet up and talk about Star Wars in person at conventions across the world and up and down the country. But thank you everyone for listening. May the Force be with you all.
And Godspeed, Rebels.
Please follow us on Twitter at BoresStar. That's at BORESSTAR. And on Instagram and Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. You can also reach us on email at starwarspodcast@gmail.com. The Star Wars Show can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and wherever podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. May the Force be with you.